In my day, I've consulted and helped probably well into the thousands of websites. I've helped people grow their traffic, grow their business, and reach their online business goals. With that said, people, especially people that are starting out, do the same mistakes over and over. It's very common that people make the same fundamental mistakes. And I've pinpointed 7 mistakes that most people who end up failing in their online business make. And I'm going to go over that with you right now. The first mistake people make, and it's unfortunate, but it's really the world we live in, is they put no effort into it. They look back a year later and they may not even have registered a domain name yet, or they have like one page up. That they basically have fallen off the map. They started with a goal and drive, and by the end of a year or so, they look back and realize that they ended up just giving up basically. The first mistake is people just give up. And what people need to understand is you don't have to do a million and one things at once, right? You take things one thing at a time. So what a lot of people tend to do is they'll start off, they'll have this goal that they want to start an online business, and they'll have a lot of motivation in the beginning, right? They'll read everything they can get their hands on, they'll build out some pages, and they'll get a little bit of momentum, but then life gets in the way and they fall off, they get out of their habit, and they never return. But what people need to understand is this takes a consistent effort on a daily basis if you want to build a successful online business. So even if it's just 10 minutes a day, I know that seems crazy, but 10 minutes a day over 365 days will really add up. You can do a whole lot with an online business in that span of time if you just do a little bit every single day. So the first mistake is really just no effort whatsoever put into it. And a surprising number of people actually do this. I would say out of 100 people, probably 40 to 50% of people will look back at the end of the year and just realize that they've completely given up. So the first mistake is giving up. The second mistake people make, and it's pretty similar to the first, is having a lack of content. So again, people will look back over a year and I'll look at their websites and see that they only have 5 pages, 10 pages. If you want to be an authority, if you want to have a website where you're basically the best of the web in whatever tiny spectrum that you're talking about, you need to generate a lot of content. You need to really crank it out. And again, if you just dedicate 10 minutes a day to this, you can build out more than just 5 pages in a year, I promise you. But people will not do that. They will not have much content on their website when they look back. And in today's day and age, there's even less excuse for this, right? Because content can take many, many forms. You can write articles if you're a writer, which is what people naturally associate with content. But today, there's audio, there's video, there's podcasts, there's even Periscope where you can live stream stuff. So not having enough time to write content is really no excuse, because you can crank out a really, really long article, a really long video, get it transcribed, turn that into content. There's just so many options available to you today. And it's really inexpensive to do a lot of these things. So the second mistake that people make is lack of content. Again, if you want to be an authority, if you really want to generate traffic, you're going to have to produce content. And it doesn't have to be you sitting down and typing. There are many different options available to you. So the number 2 mistake, lack of content. The third mistake that online business owners make is having a really terrible homepage. The homepage for a majority of websites is the most critical page on your website. And you wouldn't know this based on what a lot of people do because it seems like they just threw it together without a second thought. But your homepage, if there's any page on your website that you need to look at constantly, edit and tweak, it's your homepage. A blog post, you can write an article and let it sit there pretty much forever in a lot of cases. But your homepage needs to evolve as your website evolves. It needs to be constantly expanding, tweaking, being more enticing, etc., etc. Really, two things, in my opinion, need to happen with your homepage. The first is it needs to quickly describe what you're about, what your business is about. A fourth grader should be able to look at your website and say, oh, this website is a blog about personal development, or this website sells shoes. Whatever it is, whatever your online business is associated with, it needs to be very clearly labeled, clearly understood by everyone, and it needs to be picked up right away. Otherwise, people have a short attention spans and they'll simply hit the back button. So that's the first thing your homepage needs. The second thing your homepage needs is it needs to navigate people to where they want to go. A website, a homepage needs to have a very clear navigation structure. It needs to lead people to whatever they're interested in. So taking the shoe example, if someone wants red shoes, they need to quickly be able to find a link to red shoes. If they want blue athletic shoes, again, your homepage should be able to navigate them pretty quickly to the type of shoes that they want. You need to have a very clear structure on your website, and your homepage really needs to lead people to where they want to go. And ideally, you're leading them with every page on your website to your most wanted action. So if you're selling a product, if you have one product to sell, it should be very clearly spotted on your homepage. You want to have all your most wanted response clearly labeled somewhere on the homepage so people can get to it easily. So your homepage, again, is a mistake that a lot of people make. They'll just write a couple paragraphs, have a couple links, and basically not put much effort into it, which I understand. When you're first starting your website, your homepage is usually the first page you write, and you don't have a lot of content yet, so you just kind of put something together. But the mistake some people make is they don't go back and revisit their homepage and update it as their site grows and goes along. So the third mistake in this process is a really lack of a homepage, a not very clear homepage that does two things. One, describes what you're about, and number two, navigates people to where they need to go. The fourth mistake people make, and they make it right from the beginning, unfortunately, and it pretty much dooms them for failure, is going too broad. Now, what do I mean by that? If you are one person and you are trying to build a website about best places to travel, for example, you pretty much have no chance because there are websites out there that have a staff of hundreds, thousands of people. TripAdvisor, Expedia, Travelocity, these are mega brands, have millions and millions of dollars behind them, and are constantly expanding and really owning that travel space. So if you're just one person and you're blogging about travel, you really have no chance. I mean, you can't compete with someone who's got all of that equity and things behind it. So you need to go much narrower in your efforts if you're this type of person where it's just you and you're trying to build an online business. Or even if you're fortunate enough to have a few employees, you still need to target your audience based on what you have. If going back to the travel business, so I live in Columbus. Now I could start a blog about Columbus. So I could talk about the businesses there, the restaurants, the hotels, etc. Again, if it's just me, I would not recommend that. I gave that as an example of something that's still too broad. So people may understand that travel, yes, that's too broad. Okay, my hometown, that is still probably too broad in today's age. Unless you can really crank out some serious content. What you could do even narrower is just do Columbus hotels or just do Columbus restaurants. We're getting a little bit better. It's a lot more specific. And if I was a blogger, I could potentially have a really good food blog. I could potentially have a really good travel destinations. But again, you're still competing, and I've done this research, you're still competing with people that have a lot of muscle behind them. So narrowing it even more, you could do Columbus Mexican restaurants, for example. So only a slice of the food industry. I could become a blogger that just goes to all the Mexican restaurants in Columbus and gives my opinion, rating them, reviewing them, etc. That, if someone came to me in Columbus and said, I want to be a blogger about something, that is probably how specific I would ask them to do. If they wanted to be a food blogger, I wouldn't have it just be Columbus restaurants. I would have them go even down to a specific type. So Italian food, Mexican food, steakhouses, whatever. I would get that specific because if you're just one person, you could become the best website on the internet about Columbus Mexican restaurants or Columbus Italian restaurants. And when you're the best website on a subject on the internet, then people are going to link to you. You're going to get so much more traffic than if you would have went really broad and just done travel or just done Columbus things to do or Columbus restaurants, etc. So the fourth mistake people make, and they do this right from the beginning, unfortunately, is being way too broad in their subject. The fifth mistake, and I touched on this a little bit with the homepage, but having a poor navigation structure. You really need, when you're first starting a website, to give it some thought and effort behind it. You need to have clear vision of what, for example, your navigation is going to be, what pages are going to be beneath that, and you really need to think through this site architecture right from the beginning. And another issue is they don't have enough links on their website. So people will write a blog post, for example, and if you look at the bottom of the page, there are no links. That is detrimental. You cannot have this. Every page on your website should have some type of call to action. So again, if you sell a product or a service, every link at the bottom, it would be a good idea to link to that product or service. So going back to the shoe example, if I'm writing a blog post about red shoes, then I'm going to want to have at the bottom a link to a place where you can get red shoes, whether it's on my website or another website. The other thing is having links throughout your content. So if I'm writing a red shoe post and I mention blue shoes in my post and I have a whole section about blue shoes, well, I need to link to my blue shoes page for numerous reasons. One, it helps visitors. They might be more interested in blue shoes and they don't realize it until they get halfway down. And two is it helps with your SEO efforts. I'm more likely to rank for blue shoes if I have lots of links on my website that have blue shoes and are linking to my blue shoes page. So that is another way you need to link. The other way is breadcrumbs. Now, if you're not familiar with breadcrumbs, basically it's just links that are either at the top or the bottom, where it usually has a link to the homepage, whatever section you're on, whatever category, and then the page you're on. It gives a very clear vision of where you are on your website. So one website that does this really well is newegg.com. So if they have a processor, whatever, they'll have the homepage, processors, a certain speed, a certain whatever. They'll have breadcrumbs that you can see exactly where you are on the website. So that's another way you can link. But the big mistake that people make, and this is mistake number 5, is not having quality linking structure on their website. You need to make it as easy as possible for people to find where they need to go. Another thing you can do is having a sitemap. So you have a page on your website that links out, that has links to pretty much most of your content, depending on how big your website is. That's another way that people can find where they're looking for. But having quality linking structure, linking out to all of your relevant pages, being more like Wikipedia, right? Where every page is just filled with links within the content and it's easy to get lost in. That's what you want to have happen with your website, is people get lost in it and reading content, finding links, going to the pages you want them to where you're selling products or services, etc. Having quality links is a big mistake that people make. The next mistake, number 6, that people make is not understanding basic SEO, which means search engine optimization. So if I want to rank number 1 for red shoes, for example, I need to have content about red shoes. But let's say I'm writing a blog post about red shoes. I need to make sure red shoes, if I want to have the best chance of ranking, I need to have red shoes in my title tag. And if you don't know what a title tag is, you need to learn it. A description, it needs to be red shoes in the description. In my headline, it should have red shoes. Throughout my content, it should have red shoes. And anytime I mention red shoes on my website, I should have a link with red shoes or whatever that links to my red shoes page. This basic SEO fundamentals is absolutely critical, and a lot of people mess it up. And the other thing people really don't do is they do zero keyword research, completely disregard keyword research. So the red shoes example might be a good one. That might be a really competitive term that you have no chance of ranking for. So you're not doing yourself a good service by writing a blog post about red shoes. If you do a Google search for red shoes and there's the top 10 listings are all multi-million-dollar websites that you know of, you need to do keyword research and write about content that not a lot of people may be talking about. You need to fill a gap. When it comes to keyword research, there's 2 numbers that are important. There's demand, which more demand, the better, and there's competition. A lot of people will write about things that are high in demand but huge competition, and it's really difficult to generate traffic that way. You need to do that research and find opportunities where not a lot of people are talking about it. So lack of keyword research, lack of general understanding of SEO is the number 6 mistake. Either people flat out don't know these kinds of basic principles, or they know them and they just get lazy. I've seen both sides of the coin here. But you need to use fundamental SEO, good SEO decisions, do keyword research, and it really will give you the best chance of generating traffic. And finally, the 7th mistake that people make is they generate 0 links to their website. So there's this saying that 80% of a web page's ranking is based on off-page criteria. So it's not necessarily the words on the page, that's the 20%, or the video or the audio. But 80% of it deals with all the off-page criteria. So are you linking to your pages? That's off-page criteria. Are other websites linking to you? That's off-page criteria. But people will write content and just put no effort into generating links. You have to put in a tiny bit of effort in the beginning to get the snowball rolling. And once you become more authoritative and really start to own a space on the internet, then people will naturally link to you, which is what you want to have happen. And when that happens, you can spend less time on generating links and more just producing content. But people don't do that initial effort of getting some links. Another thing you can do is making sure you have Facebook like buttons, tweet buttons, those kinds of things on your website if your content is shareable. You need to make it as easy as possible for people to do that. And that's another way you can start generating some links to your website. But the seventh and final mistake is not generating any links, or basically just not writing content that is link worthy. I would put that under this category as well. You need to write outstanding content. That way people will link to you. But the seventh mistake, not generating any links whatsoever. So just to recap, the top 7 mistakes people make when starting off with an online business. The first, no effort. They just flat out give up, or they just don't make any progress whatsoever. You need to put in the effort if you want to get anything out of it. And unfortunately, 40 to 50% of people just flat out give up or don't do it. The second one, lack of content. Again, very similar. They'll look a year or two later and they only have a few pages up. That you have no chance of being successful if you're trying to generate a lot of traffic and you're only producing a few pages, unless you go the advertising route or something like that. But if you're wanting to generate organic SEO traffic, you're going to have to produce content. The third is a really crappy homepage, right? You need to have 2 things with your homepage. 1, it needs to explain very clearly what your website is about. And 2, it needs to navigate people to where they need to go. But a lot of people, it looks like they just threw up the homepage without any effort or thought and seeing what happens. You need to constantly evolve your homepage. The fourth, people make this mistake right out of the get-go, is going too broad. You can't become the best travel blog on the internet by yourself. You can't become the best Columbus blog by yourself, most likely. You would need to become the Columbus Mexican restaurant best blog on the internet. You need to narrow your focus. That way you are competitive in the marketplace. The fifth mistake, poor navigation. So people really do not put much effort into linking. You need to have clear navigation structure. You need to have calls to action on all your pages. And you need to link to your posts and pages throughout your content whenever possible. Linking is a big mistake that people make. The sixth mistake people make is not understanding basic SEO. You need to do keyword research and find those opportunities where there's demand and not much competition. You need to include those keywords in your title tag, description tag, headline, image alt tags, content, links, etc., etc. You need to have a basic understanding of SEO to give yourself the best chance. And finally, the seventh biggest mistake is a lack of links. I can pull up people's linking campaigns and see that they have basically nobody linking to them. You need to put Facebook likes and tweets on your website. You can do that. You can also reach out to people to get links, but you need to generate a few links. And the best way to do that is by writing outstanding content. But initially, to get that snowball rolling, you need to put in a little bit of effort. So these are the 7 biggest mistakes I've seen with people and starting their online businesses. It's a lot of this can be easier said than done. You may or may not have heard of these before, but go back to this video every now and then, or at least write these down and think, am I making these mistakes? Because they're very easy to do. So I hope this has been helpful. and I wish you nothing but success in your online business this year and beyond.